Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Hammy, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me today, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Mr. Cunningham, it is bright and sunny outside. You've got to be ecstatic.
I was a little upset that I had to come in here away from that beautiful sunshine, which I absolutely need, by the way. I mean, let's be honest. And I was a little torn to come in here and sit inside and talk to you fellas. I was actually trying to see if I could move my podcasting equipment to the patio, which is not very cool. But it's too much work and it's not worth it. But there's a pool area out there too. I thought about that, but I just look like a creep. How's it going with you guys?
A creep on a podcast in a pool area. It's good. And of course, Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast is joining us. Brenden, how are you?
Doing well. A lot of cleaning today, so this is a nice break from that.
Cleaning.
Do I see that your bed is off the floor a little? Like, what is that?
No,
is that new?
It's just it doesn't have sheets on it right now because they're in the wash.
He's domesticated there. Yeah, he's doing his thing there. I actually have some workers upstairs. We've had a bathroom that hasn't been done for like 2.5 years. It's just been sitting there, just with all of the new pieces sitting inside, still in boxes. And it's because I don't like doing shower pans, because if you leak, then they ruin your ceiling above and below and like drip down and ruin your floors. So I finally got someone over here to do that. So I have construction guys in here right now, and then I'll put the rest of the bathroom together. So that's my summer project. How about you guys?
Just concerts and vacations.
Amazing. Sweet. Okay. Let's see. We're not doing a live show today. So we still appreciate the thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube channel here for the Kings Beat. We're growing like crazy, especially once we hit that little button that says you have to actually like subscribe to make comments. That's been pretty substantial. Who knew? Like, that's one of those things. Also, jump on board with the Kings Beat. We are going to have a happy hour coming up. I'm thinking next Thursday, but I've got to figure it out. Like, it's been dipping and dodging and ducking and all that stuff. So, trying to get a big time guest is often like herding cats. So we'll get a happy hour on the books here. And in order to get an invite to the happy hour, you have to, of course, be a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat. So jump on board. We'll have content all summer long. Let's get to the news of the week. I think we all assumed
earthquakes.
You know what? Like, okay, so first of all, we can't talk about that.
Yeah, that's wild.
So I was sitting upstairs yesterday, and my wife comes into our bedroom door, and she's like, looks at her phone. I look at my phone and it says, "Hey, earthquake happening now." Like, my iPhone alerted me that an earthquake was happening, and I look, I'm like, "Oh, that's weird." She's like, "Are you getting this?" And I'm like, "Yep." And then all of a sudden, shake, 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 shake. I'm like, "Oh, that's crazy." I mean, it only lasted for like maybe a second, but I don't think it was even, I mean, it was nothing. But still, what are your thoughts on the earthquake? Have you guys felt the earthquake?
So you didn't feel it?
No, I felt the earthquake. I did.
Oh, you did?
Like,
okay.
It shook the house. I was like, holy cow. Like, shake, 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 just for like a second, though.
Okay. I felt the first one. The one last night, I in the middle of the night, I didn't feel. But I did have people text me who did feel it, and it woke them up, and they were just checking in to see if I'd felt it, because I was in a room with people that didn't feel it. And I was the first one. I was like, "Hey, I've felt there's an earthquake." And literally, our boy Chris Tavares stood up and got in like a defensive stance and trying to like feel it, like surf the wave a little bit. He's like, "I don't feel anything." So yeah, but he did feel the second
sense.
one.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
I felt nothing. Wouldn't have known it happened.
I feel nothing.
Yeah.
You're just dead inside
that it existed. Yeah.
Where were you yesterday when that happened?
Here.
Okay.
When was it? What time was it?
Evening is what? Like,
no, it was like
4 o'clock.
3 o'clock, 4 o'clock,
3 o'clock, something like that. And it was like 3:30 in the morning, or almost 3 in the morning, something like that.
I don't know.
I'll be honest.
Driving, believe it or not.
At 3 in the morning.
Never felt. Oh
no, my bad. 3 afternoon.
Oh, I've never felt an earthquake before. That was the
Really?
first time I've ever felt an earthquake. Yeah.
Ooh.
Even like when we lived in Berkeley, I never once felt an earthquake. But I'm a heavy sleeper. All right. Well, we've
All right.
meandered through the podcast here. What's going on, everybody? The Sacramento Kings have not one, but two representatives on the All NBA third team. I think the Sabonis selection was like a foregone conclusion, but I thought Fox was pretty like much a coin flip coming in. I thought once he was like 11th in MVP balloting, he had a good shot. Are you guys at all surprised that Fox is an All NBA player in his like tremendous breakout season?
I wouldn't say. I think the only thing I was surprised about was the fact that Fox actually got a vote for first team. Like, what was that? I didn't expect that one. But no, I mean, I thought that I thought that he had a good chance. Knew Domas would be a lock, and to see them being so close, especially when you think some voters might just give the Kings one person as opposed to two. It was good. It was a good thing to see because both were extremely deserving.
Yeah, Celtics and Kings are the only two teams with multiple All NBA players this year. As you said, I think it was pretty much a lock that Domas was going to make it. And as we got closer to us, it seemed more and more likely that De'Aaron was going to be that guy as well. So glad that he's got that recognition. I'm sure the clutch factors played a lot. I agree with Sean. Him getting the one first team vote is pretty funny to me. But then, there's also 33 second team votes. And actually, I think there would have been a decent difference for him if he made second team compared to third, just financially. But either way, glad that these guys are getting that recognition.
Is there is there a difference though?
So according to Spotrac, if he makes third team, the $163 million salary on that 5 years goes to 169. And I'd assume it just starts this next season, that boost. If it would be second team, that would go from 169 all the way to 182. So 25% right now, right? 26% of the cap if he got third team, 28% if he got second team, and 30% if he got first team, according to Spotrac.
But is that during the contract? I thought like it had to happen in the first year. I'm confused by that. I need to look into that more because I was under the impression that his salary wouldn't be renegotiated like basically midstream. Like it wouldn't go up in value like
Gotcha.
midstream. So I don't know. If Spotrac is saying that though, like I trust that they're doing the legwork, but I don't know. That seems strange. I thought it was like it's in the previous season to you signing your big contract extension. So the previous season to the year that your contract extension starts, which Fox's contract extension started last season. So I don't know. Maybe I'm off. But either way, it's cool. Like I was surprised. Were you guys surprised that he finished above LeBron?
Not really. I mean, I get what you're saying, but not really. Not really.
Brenden?
I don't know. I never thought of them as like competing for it just because they're guards and forwards. I was a little surprised by the amount of votes that Braun got, but not too surprised that De'Aaron was over him.
I was a little bit more surprised at the votes that Ja Morant didn't get, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, he got nothing, right? I mean, it was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was
I mean,
wild.
I don't think. I think there's a lot that plays into that. Number one,
for sure.
The off-court stuff is crazy, but I also think that their handling of the other reported stuff is a big deal. So
I also wonder how many people were already treating this season under next season's rules with the 60 game mark, 60 game eligibility. Clearly, like Steph Curry was in there, and that would have been somebody who barely, I think he fell short of what the 60 game requirement would have been.
I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it wasn't by much. And so I wonder how many people would have factored that in, but nevertheless, there was some pretty interesting voting, but I think it all played out overall the way we were probably thinking it would.
Yeah, the way it should. Yeah, 56 games for Curry. I think the Anthony Davis snub, I thought that was interesting because he's a dude who, if you want to say, well, he didn't play enough games, he played the exact same amount of games that Curry did. They both played 56 on the season.
I also thought maybe Jokic and Giannis and Embiid would make it the all first team, but that didn't happen. And I think positioning obviously plays a huge factor, but seeing Jokic on the second team was a bit surprising. But I wouldn't have taken him out. I wouldn't have replaced him for Giannis or Embiid. I mean, they deserve to be first team. So,
right, and it's what happened to Embiid last year, right?
Right.
Kind of swap.
Well,
spots.
that and I think moving forward, though, aren't they removing the positions?
I think
So
so.
it's just the top 15 players basically. First, second, third team, and you got to play over 65 games. So that's
Is
a
it
lot.
65 or is it 60? 65?
No, it's 65. Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
65. Yeah, you can
The
only
one-
miss. Go ahead.
The one other thing that surprised me was just Donovan Mitchell not making first team. Not huge, but just when it comes to team success, and I think somewhat comparable seasons to Luka, SGA, like there's just a vast difference in team success there. And I was a little surprised that was the backcourt guards.
He did get significant first team votes though, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wild that Shea has gone from like a dude who wasn't, considered a bunch of as like a franchise type player, and then all of a sudden he's just taken off and he's getting all the recognition, even though his team realistically wasn't, that competitive this season. But did they make the play-in? Were they right there? They made the play-in, but just barely. And so I think it's interesting that he's already considered a first team All NBA player, even though his team isn't very good. And they also Dame was third team with Sabonis and Fox, so it's not like they penalized Dame for having like a horrible team success here. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I did not expect. I was kind of on the bubble with Fox. I thought that there was a chance, but I also thought it was more of like a 50-50 coin flip. And that's not because I don't think he deserves it. It's just that it's really hard to gain all this recognition in one season and to go from someone who's not an all-star to barely makes it as an injury replacement to third team All NBA, which basically signifies that the league considers you a top 15 player in the league. That's pretty wild to me. So, outside of that, was there anything like with Sabonis? Like he gets his added bonus money, and that actually might help the Kings. It eats into their cap space a little bit, but again, if they want to do some sort of trickery when it comes to like giving him a raise and an extension, he now makes more money than he did before. I don't think that they'll still be able to get him locked up to an extension, but at least there's that. He basically got both of his. He had two accelerators in his contracts. Yeah, 1.3, 1.3. He earned the first for making the All-Star team, the second for making All NBA team, and now those become expected bonuses next season. So his salary jumped from 19.4 million to like right at 22 million for next season, which isn't that big of a deal. Outside of that, I think the other big news of the week is Mike Brown is in Europe watching Sasha Vezenkov. Brenden, have you watched any of this footage?
I have. I've been kind of getting caught up. I have not gotten to Game 5 that Coach Brown was at, but kind of been watching some of the rest of his playoff series. And yeah, I mean, leads the league in points per game throughout the course of the regular season. Ridiculously efficient shooter, right around 40% on about 5 threes a game. And he uses that shooting threat really well to get other baskets, backdoor cuts. Like anybody that's able to tune in, you can see very clearly how it would translate to Sacramento's offense. Like there's a lot of NBA looking actions in there. And I think the other thing that was kind of a good reminder from last time I saw him at Eurobasket was just how well he pushes the pace, which is a big emphasis for Sacramento, but he's constantly running. He doesn't look like he's running fast because in my mind, it looks like he has short steps, but he's getting them in. and he is definitely moving up and down the floor at a good pace.
It's funny to watch him and kind of think about where he fits in and what he can add in terms of their need. I mean, obviously the shooting is there, so you can check that box, but I'm looking more of like the toughness, durability, physicality. Does he foul a lot? And watching it's like he seems like a very gritty player. And you have to be to play in that league. It's different than the NBA, and obviously a very team concept oriented guy. So kind of has a flair for the dramatic. He certainly lives for the moment. There's some throughout the course of not only the season but really the playoff run. I mean, they've had some pretty clutch moments in there, and whether he's making, setting people up or hitting a big shot, there's some stuff to like. Defensively, there's always, always wonder how it translates to the NBA, but certainly you can see why they like him, and he's got the accolades and the accomplishments, and be kind of fun to see how he'd fit in.
Yeah, I think we're going to get to see that. I mean, I don't think anything is for sure, but like between your reporting and reporting overseas and like conversations I've had around the team, like they're putting the full court press on him to come over. And I think his buyout in Europe is 1.5 million. Of that, the Kings can give him $1 million, and then he'll have to pay for the remainder of the money himself. But if you jump from his salary isn't that high. I think he makes like 2.5 million this year. If you're giving a starting salary around 4 million at the biannual exception, then like coming up with $500,000 to pay that stuff off isn't that big of a deal. I don't know. Like you're convinced still, Sean, that he's coming over, right?
Yeah, I mean, based off what I'm told and throughout the season and priorities, yeah, it's definitely the interest is. I mean, look, it won't be for the Kings deciding. It's all up to him whether or not he comes over.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, there's definitely interest between both sides, and it would be something that is really all but done. You just have to kind of get through the playoffs and get negotiations. Might be a visit, and I think it's a good sign. I think that Martina Kolakatronis is over there. She's somebody who, if you go back in her, she's obviously the COO of the company, but of the organization. But if you go back in her lineage with the organization, she first came on the radar with the Kings. She helped bring Peja over from his deal after they had his draft rights for several years, and he hadn't come over quite yet. She helped negotiate that. So
Yep.
she did that with a lot of, Hito Turkoglu is another one, and she's got her expertise in doing that kind of stuff. So having her over there, I think, is a positive sign in getting Sasha in a Kings uniform next season.
Yeah, I wonder if they're gonna live in her guest house. If Sasha's gonna live in the guest
Maybe.
house, that's what Peja and Hito did when they were young players. Yeah, I think he's interesting. Like again, I get that the Kings like really like him. I get that like basically you're getting what you think is a rotational player for a mid-second round pick last year, which is solid. That's really good value for what you're getting, and he's 27. There's some room to grow. I don't think he's gonna be like a huge upside guy just because he's been a professional for years and years, and like he's just now the last 2 years, 3 years really started to take off as a player, which shows you that there's possibility of late growth. But at the same time, like we know basically what he does. He's a super super quick release player. Like he likes to just like turn and fire, which is he doesn't need to put the ball on the floor. He just like his release is quick, it's repeatable, it's like he's a knockdown 3-point shooter, and he's got range too. Like I've seen him shoot like the 28 footers without any problem. Where do you guys see like as a rebounder? He doesn't look all that great to me. Like at the NBA level, the European level, he's averaging around 8 a game. I'd be surprised if he was more like around the 5 rebound a game guy at the NBA level. But like, are there other intangibles that you see from him that you guys think will translate well?
Yeah, I don't think the rebounding stands out as anything amazing. I think that's a big TBD for me with an adjustment to NBA just size and length kind of have to see how that translates. But I do think moving up and down the floor, like I mentioned, is really big. Spacing and just decision making. I don't think that he's somebody you're putting the ball in his hands and asking him to initiate the offense, but just kind of like making the right next read and keeping the flow of the offense going. I think that he's solid in that aspect and leading the league in scoring while not like, dribbling the air out of the ball, kind of all doing it within the flow of the offense, I think is a good sign.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to add to that. I think the IQ is something that is going to be needed again with this team. I think competitive nature and spirit that all goes a long way. Rebounding is obviously, it's funny because in watching him, like I mentioned a minute ago, it's like I'm watching all these things that you hope that he can address because the Kings have obvious needs. And there's some of those moments where I'm probably not convinced that he's that type of player, but certainly, to Brennan's point, keep the ball rolling, keep the competitive spirit, keep the shooting going. Don't disrupt. He's moving all the time, which is a good sign. He's not somebody that's gonna. I mean, if he could fit into that high paced offense, and hearing Mike Brown talk about him certainly feels that there's a lot that he can add to his team. And that was the first time we'd really been able to hear Mike Brown kind of open up and talk about what he sees in Sasha and how he could fit in. But it's hard not to look at him knowing what the Kings just went through and go, okay, where would he have helped in that playoff series?
Well, I mean, when Kevin Huerter and Harrison
Right.
Barnes stopped hitting their 3-point shots, maybe he does help there. And like, look, when I look at him, I'm not like blown away by any stretch of the imagination, but like, can he be like an Anthony Tolliver type? Can he be
Well, he better be better than that.
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure. Like as far as for the Kings, like when the Kings got Tolliver, but there was a point where Tolliver was an impactful like stretch four. Can he be like a Maxi Kleiba type guy? Like I don't know. Like I'm not going to sit here and think that he's going to be like the equivalent of getting a top 10 pick in this draft or anything. Like this is a solid NBA player that should be able to fit into a role and like I don't think people should be thinking that this is like the savior guy. But I guess the bigger question is like roster construction. If you do have Sasha and you do have a guy like Keegan Murray, where do you go from there? Like, how do you still fill out the roster with players that fit the biggest needs that you have, which are like length and athleticism at the 3 and the 4? Because he doesn't really fit that. What he gives you is another shooter and another solid rotational piece. But how do you fill these positions? And does Sasha's inclusion mean the end of someone like Trey Lyles or Harrison Barnes?
Well, you basically have 6 free agents that don't have restrictions. No team option or restricted free agency, as is the case with like Neemias Queta and Keon Ellis. So Monty McNair builds his roster, and then it's going to be up to Mike Brown to figure out a rotation. So I think you're still going to bet on the talent, but that doesn't preclude you from going after somebody like Trey Lyles or even Harrison Barnes to a degree. In my opinion, I don't think you can have all of them, and I think you already have to have decisions made. But I also think you have decisions made based on where the market says you are. For example, James, $27.5 million cap hold on Harrison Barnes.
Yep.
If he's commanding that type of dough, no, right? Like you're not looking at paying $20 million a year for Harrison Barnes. But going forward, if that money is more like an 11, 12, that's something more manageable. So there are decisions that you will be made, but ultimately it's going to be the job of Monty McNair to construct the roster and Mike Brown to figure out the rotation.
Sasha doesn't help you defensively at all. Like, I think that's a huge question mark for him, even to the point where he could be a really bad defender. Like, I think that he's going to be passable. But I think he's going to be tested a lot more in that than he is in the EuroLeague. NBA, there's going to be teams that say, okay, give me that guy switched on to me and just see what I can do. And he's got to be able to survive that. And I think that's still a big question mark. And you kind of say the same thing about Trey Lyles, right? I think that Trey has proven to be passable on defense, but if you want to improve defensively, like where is it coming from? I think there's room for both Sasha and Trey if, you want to feel okay about moving Keegan Murray between the 3 and the 4, or if you're okay with Trey Lyles getting some of the backup 5 minutes. But if you bring Sasha over, I do think that makes Trey a lot more of a question mark. And who's your starter is the main offseason question, right? Is who's the other starting forward? If it's not HB brought back, is it a sign and trade? And I don't think that Sasha is solving your who's the starter alongside Keegan question.
I totally agree. I totally agree with that statement right there. I have a tough time believing that you got better defensively at all if you try to move Keegan to the 3 and move Sasha Vezenkov into the 4 alongside Sabonis. I just don't see that there's a way. I mean, like, and if you break down the rest of the starters, like with Herter and with Fox, that's like a really, really slow like defensive team, in my opinion. That's not a lot of athleticism outside of Fox. It's not a lot of length. It's not a lot of anything. Maybe physicality, but still that would be pretty rough. Yeah, I think it's interesting. And like what you guys said, like Mike Brown has to deal with what he gets dropped off. And like it's like he gets a basket of fruit, like, all right, here's your delivery for the week. Like, you go ahead and try to make something special out of this. But I think that
I mean, he has a voice in the room, which is
yeah,
key. And I think they've already factored in, the positives and negatives of Sasha. But I think you're right to point out that if anyone's thinking and watching YouTube highlights of this guy and saying, "Oh, this guy could be Luka Doncic," no, like he's not a
no,
generational talent. He's not anybody. He would definitely fill a role on the team. And then again, you have a huge question mark as to what it looks like in his first NBA season. So team concepts, for a guy who may not be a strong defender, is he a willing defender? It's kind of like a Terrence Davis, where Terrence Davis kind of gets, it's weird because you don't see this too often, but team defense is a little bit different than when he's on ball defense. Well, maybe the opposite can be true for somebody like Sasha Vezenkov, who has maybe more of a team defensive concept as opposed to being a weak on ball defender. So there's certainly decisions and factors that'll go into it, but ultimately I think they look at this kid as saying this, well, and he's younger. You can't even call him a kid. He's like, what, 27, 28 years old.
27.
Yeah, this is somebody who's going to, kind of give them a little bit of grown man in their roster, which is probably needed at this point. Some maturity for sure. So, I think they factor all that in there and realize that he's a very talented player that could really add some quality depth to a roster that sorely needs it.
People hear the EuroLeague MVP candidate and go to Luka, but I think the more like accurate comps of, if you want to stick with the EuroLeague MVP, or like a Nemanja Bjelica or like Nikola Mirotic type of guy.
Yeah. And I mean, Mirotic came over and was a really good scorer and a really good rebounder. Like he put up stats, and the Kings have been tied to him, I've heard. Like if things had fallen through with Sasha, that Mirotic, there would actually have been some sort of conversation, of potential conversations with Mirotic. But I don't think he fits. Again, like, you're not getting the right mixture. I think, like, when I look at him too, you bring up Bjelica, I'd even say there's a little bit of like Bogdanovic, but like the power forward version.
I was going to say there's some dribble penetration to him that Belly just doesn't have. There's some, he puts the ball on the deck. I think his handle is pretty decent. I'll be interested to see how that carries over to the NBA. Does it translate? Because he looks to have some drive and kick potential.
Yeah, and I think the question that we all have is that if you bring over Sasha and you do retain guys like Trey Lyles and Harrison Barnes, and all of a sudden you're looking at your 4 forwards and it's Trey Lyles, Sasha Vezenkov, Keegan Murray, and Harrison Barnes. Like, who's going to play defense? Who's going to block shots? Who's going to protect Domas? Who's going to give you that athleticism that you need? And the answer is none of the above. So, like, how are you going to go out and fill that need and still get these guys minutes? Unless, like Brenden said, you're stealing minutes from the 5 for Trey Lyles. I could see a way where Trey Lyles plays a bunch of small ball 5 with a guy like Sasha, next to him. And with as long as you had a very athletic, long 3 that could play alongside these guys as well. So I don't think all 4 will be there when training camp opens, but that's just my own personal like I don't know that for sure, but just like looking at the way that they need to improve this roster, the one way to improve this roster is to like find a better option at the 3/4.
Right. And preferably one that can rebound very
Yeah,
well.
rebound, run the floor. Yeah. Yeah. So
one last question I have for you guys on Sasha. What do you think it takes financially? Like, is it the biannual to bring him over? Are you having to use that 4.5 million about?
see, that's the other problem because he's having a really good season. I think the thing with Bogdanovich when he came over and got the 3-year 27, Bogey was only 24. So you're getting a younger player. I don't know that you want to pay Sasha the like $8 to $9 million range. And maybe I'm crazy there because you're gonna have to use your MLE to do that. You can't use, or you're gonna have to use just pure cap space, which would mean that you'd have to waive Harrison Barnes in order to do it. I think there's got to be a way to get him over here on that biannual exception. That would be the hope that you're getting him for like a 2-year 9 or a 9-ish 10 right around there, or like a 3-year $14 million deal. That would make more sense. But like I have no idea, like to be honest with you, what it's going to take. Like it just depends. He wanted the biannual exception last year, and the Kings didn't give it to him. They had carved out a $1.6 million like little cap space out of the MLE that they gave to Malik Monk, and they had hoped to use that to get him in on like a 3-year deal, 4-year deal, and that didn't work out. So he wants more money than the 1.5 to $2 million that the Kings were offering before. And it'll be interesting.
He should.
Well, yeah, but he was making $750,000 last year, something like that. So when he turned down that money, it was still like, wow, that's $1 million raise to go to the NBA. And then he's had a great season. Like he's absolutely been spectacular. Do you guys like if you've watched their games, is it intriguing to you that 2 of Monty McNair's former guys are on his team in Tariq Black and Isaiah Cannon?
I did not connect that as former.
No, I didn't either.
Guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? So like it's not like Monty's getting like that's a deep scout right there. Like you're gonna know much more about him than than you would a normal player, because I'm sure that those guys still have a relationship with Monty.
I do enjoy watching EuroLeague for the random players that pop up that you just did not expect at all. Like,
who?
Like Mike James is going to play in the next series. I think it's AS Monaco, I think is who he's against, which also has Chima Monecki on the team.
Yeah. Mike James has made a hell of a career overseas. Yes. I mean, he's a superstar.
Yeah. I mean, it is crazy to see guys that disappear, and then you're like, oh man, I remember scouting him when doing draft coverage. So, and then there they are. You're like, hey, good for them. They're still playing. I mean, I think it's pretty crazy. Like DeMarcus is playing in Puerto Rico. And so is Hassan Whiteside, right? There's Hassan Whiteside and one other, I think, is playing over there.
There's a few. Yeah, there's a few. I can't remember offhand, but Hassan Whiteside, if you follow him on Snapchat, which I'm embarrassed that I still have Snapchat, but he's mainly the reason for it because he has some pretty entertaining stories, and he's on this like deck of this beautiful property in Puerto Rico, and off in the distance he zooms in on this whale that's just out there, and he's just yelling hello whale or something like that, like he's talking to this whale from like this balcony, but then right there on his porch in this like planner is also like an iguana. So and then he zooms in on the iguana. I don't know, Hassan Whiteside is endless entertainment for me. So
unique personality. Yeah. We'll just leave it at that. The stories we have, the Hassan Whiteside stories are never ending. Let's get to the Kings held a workout this week. I fear that they're doing the same thing they did last season, which is block the media out of their workouts, which became a point of contention with us last year. At this point, we're like, okay, whatever. trying to recover from a long season, and Sean's still doing Warriors coverage. The highlighter of this one, I don't know who else was in this, but Oscar Shibwe, which I had, again, like, I haven't shifted over and started doing all my draft coverage like I normally do for two reasons. Number one, this season lasted too long, or lasted way longer than normal. And number two, the Kings have the 24th pick in the draft, as well as pick number 38 and pick number 54 in the second round. But the Kings don't have a top 10 pick. So I'm not doing like mountains of mock draft work when I'm not even sure if they're going to keep this pick. Shibwe is interesting. He's like a Wooden Award winner, Naismith guy, 6'9", 260, 7'4" wingspan, gigantic, big, strong dude, 16.5 points, 13.7 rebounds last year at Kentucky, but not the super athlete, not the shot blocker that you would expect the Kings to be looking at. And a guy who's projected to go in the late second round, maybe even not get drafted. I don't know. Any thoughts on Shibwe?
Not really, especially considering the workouts before the combine. I usually don't pay much attention to those type of things, but especially if it's nice to, if there's somebody you identify for sure, get some conversations with them. You had the opportunity to do it, so good for them. Combine right around the corner, and that's where a lot of times teams will start to have face-to-face discussions and kind of plot out workout schedules. Yeah, hopefully, I'm not too concerned if the media has, if they haven't opened up for a workout before the combine. Hopefully they do it afterwards. I don't care if it's a top pick or you have maybe only second rounders. I think it's necessary. It's a good look for your organization. It's good to hear from some of these people who come in and experience your organization. And I just don't see the reason why they wouldn't. So hopefully they will. And but yeah, my attention hasn't gone that way yet. It typically doesn't happen until after the combine for me. But certainly he's a big body, rim protector, and could rebound. Obviously, those are things that that would be attractive to the Kings at this point.
Yeah, no big thoughts on Shibwe for me. I think I got that name right.
Shibwe.
He's
Yep.
he's a big body. I think of almost like a Nick Richards-ish, like, even though not quite. I'm just a guy that's going to be a late pick. This is something I think that if anywhere it's pick 54 undrafted that you'd be talking about from what Sacramento's working with. And, Alex Len and Chimezie Metu are free agents. I'd imagine you're going to try to shop Rashaun Holmes. Neemias Queta, I'd expect him to be back, but is a restricted free agent. Like, we know that you need center depth on this team, so I get why they'd be poking around, but doesn't say all too much, or it doesn't reveal anything in my mind.
Yeah, he's I'd say he's more like Udoka, what is it? Azubuike for that plays for the Jazz. He's like that kind of big man, just like a gigantic, right, big, strong dude that's not going to get pushed around, but also isn't going to go up and like he'll probably struggle a little bit to dominate the glass like he did at the college level, just because he doesn't have like elite athleticism. So anyway, I think it's telling that the Kings are starting the draft process. The combine is May 16th to May 18th in Chicago. So the Kings will be there in force. I'm sure that they'll have all kinds of people. Well, they'll have interviews with all kinds of players. They're not going to be limited because, like, a lot of times when you're way up high in the draft, you don't interview nearly as many people as maybe you should. So this is a good way for the Kings to sort of kick the tires on guys and get to know them a little bit, just in case down the road you cross paths.
Combine's also a good opportunity for organizations to meet with other organizations as well.
Yeah.
It's a big meeting, kind of gathering area for organizations who, whether they're still in the playoff hunt or not, at this time next week they'll be having the Western Conference Finals. So, the conference finals in both the East and the West. But it's just a way for it's not just those picks. It's a meeting point for agents and G League representation and all the organizations in the league, and very much like summer league in that regard. Only one center place as opposed to several different summer leagues from throughout the. Well, now all the NBA ascends upon Vegas, so that's definitely a meeting place for them. But they get a lot of business taken care of, so it's first in many steps for the offseason.
Yeah, this is opening a trade season. That's what like people don't know. Like this is when a lot of deals start to like form at the combine, and then you'll see like movement as far as like draft pick movement, all that stuff. The Kings 24, like we talked about, 24, 38, 54. What do you think the chances are of them drafting any 1, 2, 3? Like, do you think that they're gonna be active here? Because you do have some roster spots that are open. And I do think that like you could use the 38th pick or the 54 pick and find a player that you might want on a two-way contract, especially with both Neemias Queta and Keon Ellis no longer under two-way contracts, and probably either looking at, maybe Ellis gets another two-way, but for a guy like Neemias, it's either, I would say, main roster or bust at this point.
Right. I think they'll look at shopping for sure, especially if it's a way to possibly move something that's more undesirable at the moment from a contractual standpoint, like Rashaun Holmes, who haven't been able to necessarily find a place for. But at the same time, they'll be aggressive, but they'll be fully prepared to draft all three if necessary. Wouldn't necessarily totally bet on it, but it does give you a pick for this season that what's very much heralded as a very deep draft, even in the 20s. So there's talent to be had, and they'll be looking.
Yeah, I mean, I'd expect the same, that they try and shop it. I'd be surprised if they end up making every single one of these picks, but also could see it happening. Like I think that 24 could have decent value around the league, but you also can find good players at that spot. And I think that it's already a young team that you're working with. And if you can add to that youth, somebody that has a little bit of an upside, maybe, that you can find intriguing guys at 24, even if you don't go the upside route. If you go more of a safer kind of just plug and play, I think that you see different teams find rotational players that can have a value at 24. I think there's a good amount of wings, like 3-4s, that you can find in that sort of range. I'm not deep in my draft dives yet to give you the most specific names with that much confidence, but we'll be there soon. I think that you definitely prepare for both, and yeah, I mean, see what happens.
Yeah, so I'm looking at number 24 in a slightly different way. I mean, sure, they may use the pick. Like that's always a possibility, right? And they can't trade the pick before the draft. They can draft someone for another team, but they can't trade it before the draft because of the Stepien rule, because they as of right now, their 2024 pick is tied up in the Kevin Huerter trade from last year. So you don't have like a huge amount of flexibility that you can do, except for you can move up or move back in the same draft as long as you stay in the first round. So they could like do something like where they package their 2 seconds to move up to like 17 from 24 to 17. Something like that might work. But it's also possible that they'll make a move with this pick. So I kind of look at the value of the 24 pick. If we go back a couple of years ago when the Kings had Marco Bellinelli, they signed him to like a 3-year $18 million contract. He had, after his first disastrous year in Sacramento, was like, okay, let's see if we can part ways with him. And the Kings were able to get the 22nd pick in the draft for a guy who A, can shoot, and B, like had like a role on playoff teams in the past. So they were able to go out and get a pick. They blew that pick with Malachi Richardson, but I still think that that's kind of what the Kings could do with this pick as well. They could look at a player around that range of, like, so a rotational player, but more like a 8 or 9 man guy in your rotation that you could possibly wheel and deal that pick for. Or like what Sean said, the Rashaun Holmes situation. If you need to clarify the Rashaun Holmes situation or find him a new home, and it costs you a second-round pick, or it costs you 2 second-round picks, or it costs you the 24th pick in the draft, you might consider it because it is $25 million over the next 2 years. So I could see the Kings like looking for a player around, around Rashaun Holmes' value, around his price tag, but giving up the 24th pick and Rashaun to take back another player around that range. Does that make sense? We're not very lively today. We're not very lively today. What's going on?
It's his candle. What candle you got today?
I don't have one right now. I did want to tell you, though, since you got me on a slight tangent, is that there's these electric lighters I've realized that I need to get because I can't reach into this with a normal lighter right now.
Well, that one's almost kaput, isn't it? That's why you need one of those long,
it definitely
long things.
Yeah. But if you get an electric lighter, you will never have to buy another lighter.
One time my son bought something on Amazon and he got it home. It got shipped to us, and it's like, open it up and it's like, what is this? And he's like, well, I don't know. I thought it looked cool. And my wife wasn't paying attention when he bought it on Amazon for like $10, and it was a lighter. I'm like, okay, bro, you're not having a lighter, but it had like a little like spark thing in the middle, and you could hook it up to a USB drive and charge it. So it didn't have fluid
it's an
in
electric lighter.
An electric lighter. There it is.
You don't have one of these?
No. Damn, you said that ready.
I did. Well, it's right here by my candle.
Yeah.
Let's take this question on really quick before we get to the business about. Well, maybe we'll just do this. The business of basketball.
All right.
Will Rashaun Holmes be on this team next year?
You're asking all these questions, James. I know you have to come prepared, but what can we do here in May 12th? I mean,
I was prepared. Well, I mean, the draft is only 4 weeks away. Like, it's one of the opportunities to trade him.
I was actually thinking about this, just kicking around some conversations with the, I guess I'll call him a media member that's covering the Warriors series, and they're just like,
I guess I'll call him a media member. It's just sick burn by Sean on somebody.
It is. That's a bit disrespectful. Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't think this person would consider themselves media members either, but I'll leave their names out for the just protect the innocent, I guess. But somebody who, he's actually probably the same. I've had somebody ask me, they're like, can it just not work with Rashaun Holmes? Is there any world that exists that he can actually still play in a Kings uniform under Mike Brown? And it had me really thinking about that. I didn't necessarily bounce it off anybody, but I just don't see it personally. But it is kind of a wonder that people might be kind of considering that, kind of wondering about that. And I think I had to remind people, it's like, rebounding isn't necessarily great there, so he's not really addressing the need. The way they play Sabonis with the dribble handoff is. That type of style isn't conducive for his fit. So even if Sabonis is off the floor, they continue to try to run the same type of offense. So again, where does he fit in? So no, my answer would be no. And I think most Kings fans understand that. I was surprised why some certain people who were able to cover the league that maybe they just don't watch a lot of Kings basketball. Or they just remember Rashaun with the numbers. Just has to find the style that fits for him.
Yeah, I think Rashaun needs to be on like a pick and roll heavy team, which is just not what Sacramento is. It's neither one's. Like, it's not a shortcoming for Coach Brown. It's not a shortcoming for Rashaun necessarily. It's just like those styles that what the player brings and what the team is trying to get out of their bigs just does not correlate. I still think Rashaun's going to be a fine player on a different team. It just needs to be more of a pick and roll heavy team. To answer James' question, I'll say yes, that I still think he's going to be here, just because I think it's hard to move off. It's just over 12 million this next year, and the year after is 12.8 of a player option that I'm sure he's going to be picking up. And I kind of think of it like the Buddy Hield situation. I guess Buddy was still playing and giving you some value, but it's a lot easier to move on that deal as a couple years come off of it. And I think that, as you reach the deadline or as you reach next offseason, it'll be a lot easier to find a way to move off of Holmes than it would be right now. So I'll say yes, I think he's going to be here, but not for a lack of trying.
Yeah. I don't know how I would answer it. Like with a gun to my head, I'd probably say no. I don't think he'll be in Sacramento. But we're looking at a player that like 2 years ago averaged like 14 points, 8.3 rebounds, and like 1.6 blocks per game. It really is surprising to me that they weren't able to figure out ways to do pick and rolls, because it's not like Shemezi Metu can run the high screen and roll either. Like he can't do the DHOs like Domantas Sabonis can. I would have liked to have seen them try to make it work a little bit more. And maybe it just won't, ever. But at the same time, I remember Rashaun Holmes as like this incredible hustle player, the heart and the soul of the team for a couple of years. Then he gets paid. Then he gets injured. His eye issues, his personal issues, all that stuff kind of snowballed. Then you bring in Domantas Sabonis, and he's just put out to pasture almost. And it really is tough because you don't want to waste all that cap space. And so if I'm the Kings, I'm aggressively looking for him to not be on the roster and hoping that maybe some team is willing to listen for a couple of second round picks and taking his 25 million over the next 2 years and like clearing up the cap space, because stretch provisioning him is really difficult to do. Like,
yeah, and I don't think they're
yeah,
gonna do that at all. I
no,
I would take that off the table. For example, if it gets to the point where to your point, like is he going to be on the team or not? Well, yeah, certainly they'll try to move him. They're not going to be stupid though. They're not going to stretch provision him. They're more than happy to have him come back on the team and maybe look ahead to the trade deadline in February,
yeah.
at that point. But no, I don't see them doing anything like that. It's not like this guy is a lost cause or anything like that. He could. We saw. I mean, he helped you win a game in LA this year when called upon. So,
Yeah, and a stretch provision with him would be like it's twice the amount of years on the contract plus 1 year. So basically 5 years, you'd split up his 25 million bucks, and you would have to pay him 5 million a year. Well, that only frees up 7 million this year, 7 million the next year in salary, maybe closer to 8 in year 2. But then year 3, 4, and 5, you're out 5 million bucks that you wouldn't have been out before. And so really like the payoff isn't really, it's not there. And once you stretch him, you can't trade him. Like you can't trade like the mystical rights to him. That money's just now dead cap space and gone. And it's gone the whole time. Like there's nothing you can do years down the road. Yeah. So I think it's going to be really tough, but maybe at the deadline, if you get to that point and then you can get him to take less money on the back end of his deal or something to buy him out, maybe the Kings would consider it. But yeah, it can be a little complicated with him. Have you guys been keeping up with all the playoff series? Clearly, Sean, you're down in San Francisco covering games, and but like, what are your overall thoughts on what we're seeing here as we're getting closer and closer to the conference finals?
I liked all the game sixes, man. Like these series have been incredible. I think the one that has really captured my imagination and attention more than the Warriors one was what's going on with Philly and Boston. Having both the road teams win twice in that series is really really awesome. I think Philly has left a huge opportunity. I think they just for all the talk about, oh, James Harden's back, and he was an absolute zero factor in game 6. So that series going back to Boston feels like it's just got a Celtics win all over it. But Philly's got to be confident, man. They've won there twice in this series alone. So that's been pretty awesome to see. I think, as the Warriors and Lakers, I've been dead wrong about that series, man. I thought that I didn't think the Lakers were going to have. I didn't think the Warriors were going to have problems with the Lakers. I really didn't. I thought it'd be a 5-6 game series. Thought there'd be some blowouts. It was kind of looking that way. I mean, both teams have been blown out in this series as it is, but it hasn't been a captivating series. In fact, it's been rather unentertaining for the most part, I felt. And I think a lot of it is not just what the Lakers are doing. I mean, when Anthony Davis is on, they win. It's kind of been the the secret of their success when getting to the free throw line against a team like the Warriors, who just doesn't get to the free throw line at all. So you're going to hear the term free throw disparity so much in that series. And Jordan Poole has continued to struggle, and They've gone away from Kevon Looney for someone who's been so impactful against Domantas Sabonis. You can't guard Anthony Davis the same way, and Draymond Green has been really, really good. So the Warriors have had their struggles, but I think majority of the struggles that they're experiencing in this series with the Lakers are all self-inflicted. And I think, there's a lot of residue left over from the Kings series. I mean, the fact that they're basically having to play every other day, you're not seeing them shoot around. They did shoot around this morning in LA before Game 6, but they're not really having practices. They're just totally trying to take advantage of rest when they need it. Wiggins is questionable for Game 6 with this cartilage fracture in his ribs. I think he'll play, but he was incredible in Game 5. There's just so many things that go wrong for the Warriors are so self-inflicted and really have nothing to do with what the Lakers are doing. But it's been a rather dud series, I think.
Yep.
Has not hit the way that I thought it would. Maybe some moments here and there, and I hate the free throw conversation. Like, I get why. I don't mind the just fact of like keep guys off the line, but when it gets to like I don't know what a foul is and just all the BS of I never said anything like that we hunt fouls, and I can't do all the foul hunting conversation. That is too much for me. But I think the conference semis in general have been a blast. Like, I really enjoyed the Miami-New York series because it's so different than the other ones. Those are two teams that, I know New York is a pretty good offense, but they do it in a sort of ugly way with like slow pace and offensive rebounds, very Thibodeau. And Miami's a solid physical team as well. So I thought that series has been really fun. And I'm really disappointed that Denver Phoenix ended the way that it did. Like, what an embarrassment for Phoenix, for now that it's 2 years in a row that you got your ass kicked on your last game of the year in your home building. Like, they're not going to be able to live that down until they prove it wrong next offseason. But it's a shame because I think they've had two really good regular seasons that are just, this is all they're going to be known for now, I feel like.
They owed Al McCoy better than that. That was Al McCoy's last game, the longtime radio announcer, 51 years, man, with the organization. And for them to go out like that, I'm wondering, like, after that 36-point game that Booker and Durant had both had, two things came to mind. I'm like, where's Booker the rest of the way? Thought he was awful. Thought Cameron Payne was clearly their better guard in that series. And I'm wondering why the hell Kevin Durant is shooting so many threes. And he actually says as much in his post-game press conference. I mean, Kevin Durant needs to get downhill. Kevin Durant needs to shoot over everybody. He doesn't need to be shooting threes so much. And yeah, it's a bit frustrating to watch Phoenix go out like that. But I also felt, man, there's teams that'll step on your throat and go for the kill. Denver did that and then some. I mean, Denver, that was the best I'd seen the Nuggets look all year long. And they were really good, man. They were really good. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was so good for what he's been in this series. Just that team's ready. They look primed for a finals run.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. Like, did we just all overlook Denver? Like, I think everyone has. Like, the whole season, everyone just overlooked them. You just assume that, like, they're nice, but they're nothing special, And
well, you know why you feel that way is because of what happens in the playoffs. What were they going to look? What are they going to look like against the Warriors? What are they going to look like against this team? If they get into a series, that's why.
Now it's just Jokic just dominating every single game, and it just doesn't matter. Like, he's so fun to watch, and like if it is the Lakers that get past, like the Lakers are a much easier matchup in my opinion for the Nuggets than the Warriors would be, because I think the Warriors are going to have the same. They can do some of the same things they did to Domantas Sabonis, where like who in the world on LA is going to defend Jokic? Like, that's.
But to that point, James, too, the Warriors will have the benefit of knowing what it looks like. They already know what it looks like to beat the Nuggets. They already know that they've got that kind of ownage in their head. Granted, Jamal Murray wasn't and Michael Porter Jr. were not factors, but that's what they'll have that confidence going in there, knowing that they've already done it before. Doing it against the Lakers, it's the same thing with the with what the Warriors are dealing with right now against Lakers. It's like they haven't seen that before. Certainly they've seen LeBron James and they have the history in the postseason with LeBron James, but Anthony Davis, that's a whole nother ball game. And playing against a lot of those big, long players is a whole different discussion. And then you got a guy like D'Angelo Russell, who, with the exception of like game 5, has been a factor in this series. And he's looking at to shove it up the ass of his former team that exiled him to Minnesota.
I think it's all like it's been a fun run. Like again, like the Knicks Heat series is like two classic overachievers just like slapping each other. Like it's all of it's ugly, and then you're like, okay, well, it's still entertaining. And then like the other series is just like to me that's whoever wins the Philly Boston series is probably the NBA champ. Maybe I'm
So
crazy
there you go. There you go, overlooking Denver again, right? Just
I overlook Denver again. Forget Denver.
What I wouldn't think that we would have been talking about here in May is when I went to go cover the Niners in Philadelphia in the NFC in that playoff series, NFC Championship, and the day before I went to go see the Celtics, the Sixers, and the Nuggets, and that game where Embiid absolutely manhandled the Nuggets and Nikola Jokic, and not knowing that would be possibly a finals preview. And if that's going to be the final, sign me up right now. That would be a fun series.
Yeah, I think so too.
I will also shout out Stockton's own, I believe it is, Gabe Vincent, who has been balling in this postseason.
Yeah.
Where's he from, Sean?
He was born in Modesto, went to high school at St. Mary's High School in Stockton, then became a Stockton King in the G League and got to play there. But born in Modesto, kind of raised in Modesto, Stockton kid in terms of basketball and high school and all that. But yeah, he's probably got a payday on the horizon.
He does.
He's
going
also
into free agency.
The one that Vlade, they took the picture with Vlade in his office and you could see his draft board, right? That was Gabe Vincent.
Yeah, that was Gabe.
Yeah, the Vlad father picture sitting right there.
That's awesome.
Right next to the draft order that the Kings had. Okay, well, let's wrap this thing up. We're gonna keep going throughout the summer. We'll start hitting draft stuff pretty heavily. We'll start talking free agency and potential fits for the Kings. We'll talk about potential trade targets because I think the Kings are going to be super active again this offseason. They got a lot of holes to fill in their roster. They know that, but they're also building something and should be pretty interesting to see how they attack this summer, whether they take another like gigantic hack or whether they just make tweaks. I think we're gonna have to wait and see. But let's get to final thoughts. Brenden, what do you got?
Just nothing up there.
I've been playing new video games recently.
Here
that
we
I've been
are.
having a lot of fun with.
What are you playing?
Beat this Jedi Survivor game that was phenomenal. And today, a new Legend of Zelda game came out that I am extremely hyped for.
What platform is that on? Is it on PS5?
That is on the Switch, actually. But the Jedi game, I bet, is on your PS5, and that was a badass game.
Okay. What's it called?
Jedi Survivor. Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah, Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
My boys will probably get Zelda. I grew up on Zelda, like Legend of Zelda with the old Nintendo.
Yeah.
The NES, the 85 version?
No. Not 85. Like
Wasn't it 85?
I had an Atari 2600.
No, that's old.
That was that was well before. And then I had a Commodore 64.
I don't even know what that is. Commodores are Lionel Richie band. I remember I had a NES. Lionel Richie, by the way, is host of American Idol and judge in American Idol and very good singer. There you go. I forgot where I was going. No, I would like to see. I do need to get. I'm waiting for them. I'm waiting for the new Grand Theft Auto, which has always been a source of great.
Been waiting
joy.
A decade, Sean.
Yeah, it's awesome, right?
It's never going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Why?
I mean, it's supposed to, but like
I hear you can play
GTA forever.
Yeah, I hear you can in Call of Duty you can play with Kevin Durant now.
I did see that is a thing. Yes.
And De'Aaron
Huh.
Fox was not a fan of what's going on with Call of Duty right now. If you follow him on Twitter, he's in full off-season video game mode right now, and he's just throwing bombs at all the at the Call of Duty franchise.
Good old De'Aaron Fox and his love of Call of Duty. Okay,
Even as
so
a father.
are we done with our final? What do you? Any other final thoughts, Brendan? Brendan's got a new car.
Did you what? Hold on.
Yeah.
What'd you get?
I got a fuel efficient car. I got a Hyundai Elantra.
Huh.
Something
like
basic. I do like it. Yeah, not many miles on it. Newer year and good price. So I just wanted something that was good on gas and not ugly. And some people would disagree on the not ugly, but I think it looks fine.
Who?
I don't know, but I'm sure some people.
Oh, okay. I thought you had somebody in your ear already telling you what a ugly mobile you have.
No, it's a matter
Sean
of time.
got me he got me looking at the Envoy, the EV Envoy from Chevy. But then while I was there, I was
the Equinox. The Equinox.
Equinox.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it Equinox? Okay. Well, while I was looking at that, the new Blazer EV. Oof.
Well, now you're into a different tax bracket, sir.
Oof. Yeah, it's a nice car, though.
Well, duh.
That's
it's
a nice
expensive.
Car.
If it's expensive, it's going to be fucking nice. My final thoughts. Well, I was going to ask you guys. We were talking so much about the playoffs, just because I'm around it so much right now. The Warriors have Game 6. They're trying to come back from a 3-1 deficit. The prospect of possibly seeing LeBron and Steph Curry in a Game 7 on Sunday isn't lost on me, and how cool that might be. But how do you think this series ends up?
I kind of think Golden State's going to pull it off.
Wow.
And
so just for the record, for people who don't, they don't keep up with the Warriors, they did this once before in 2016, right, against Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
They didn't win the title that year. The Cavs got them, but they
I was
pulled
there
off
for
the
all
upset.
of that.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
So you both think they're going to do it?
No, I don't.
I
hate betting against them, but there's some body language things that I've seen a couple of times where you just look at them, they're like, man, they really don't feel like a team that wants to hang out for the next month together. Like the road ahead, you can just see it takes a want to be in it at this point. You got to like to put up with stuff and to, again, you're down in a series and you could be looking at yourself like, man, I could be in Tahiti next week and not worrying about this. And what are the chances of winning a championship? I don't know.
But the exit, the season ending could culminate in a lot of
culmination.
Yeah. Well, there could be a lot of deterioration in the franchise as this dynasty that they've built. So,
yeah,
man, I don't know.
Hard reset button.
I think the Lakers close it out tonight. That's just my feeling there. But there was, I don't want to say an arrogance, but there's certainly a confidence around people who cover the series, both from the Bay and LA, who just felt that with the Warriors getting that win, that all of a sudden they're going to be primed for Game 7 on Sunday. And I think it's not a much belief in the Lakers.
The arrogance of Warriors and Lakers media. Interesting. And the team. That's something I've seen. I'm like, huh. All of this feels really strange. All of you just expect this. And I think as someone who's covered the Kings forever, I just kind of expect them to lose all the time. So I think it's just a different perspective. You're like, all right, well, they lost again. But saw that coming, when you've covered it as long as we have. Yeah. Anyway.
We're 4 days away from the lottery. Typically right now it'd be like, oh shit, almost about to find out. Are they going to move up?
I won't even probably. Well, no, I'll watch it because I want to know where Victor's going. Yeah, because that could mean a lot for the Kings too, where he ends up.
will the team that gets number 1 bring the like Wembanyama jersey already, or will they do have any
Just, like,
gimmick that just like
rocket.
tips their hand?
Just like pull on Wembanyama masks.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, I think that's what you do. You just like go full Victor right there. Like it's over. All right. Final thoughts from me. I just can't. The water's got to warm up, but I'm ready to be on the lake. I'm gonna
Just go do a cannonball right now.
I'm
Just
gonna
run out
spend
there.
some time. It's cold, man. There's a lot of snow runoff, and it hasn't been warm until the last couple of days. So I got to get my garden planted. I got a bunch of stuff on the agenda. Got to get that bathroom put together.
Someone else is doing that though, right?
Well, I'm doing it after the showers, and I got to do the floor. I got to install the toilet, install the vanity.
You wonder why your back hurts.
Yeah. Well, I have been walking. I've been starting my rehab. I've been out. I walked 3.5 miles today, 3 miles yesterday. I'm fighting through, people. Got to fight through the back injuries. Sweet. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. You guys don't have anything else? Brenden, you look like you have. No?
No, I watched the hockey lottery the other day, just thinking the Sharks might get the first pick. I don't know why I watched that. I heard that like the guy getting picked is generational, this Bedard guy, and I was like, well, shit. I watched some hockey playoffs, and
that's
way
the best
more
time to
fun, way more fun than I thought I would. I just randomly turned it on. I was like, man, this is a blast.
It's
hockey
intense.
playoffs are the best.
I
Yeah,
also
It's
watched the
intense.
Oilers, and I'm pretty sure Connor McDavid, I think that's the right name.
Yeah.
Is just ridiculous.
Yeah, yes, he is.
And he was a blast to watch. So I was like, man, if the Sharks jump up, get this Bedard guy, I might be a full-on hockey fan. And it didn't happen, so I don't give a shit.
Where did they get? What did they get?
They got 4th. Bedard's going
That's
to
not
Chicago.
bad though. That's
No,
that's
it's all
a good
right.
thing.
It's not enough to, call me a couple years.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Gabriel Flores, Stockton boxer Gabriel Flores is back in his hometown this weekend, Saturday. So he'll be fighting at Stockton Arena, where he headlined a couple years ago. He's not headlining this fight because he actually suffered 2 losses of his last 3 fights, but super, super young. This dude turned pro at like 16 years old. He's on Top Rank. Pretty inspirational story. He lost his mother when he was 12 in a drive-by shooting that still hasn't been solved. Cold case in Stockton. So
Sean's going dark like James does.
Yeah, but his dad is his trainer, and they live in Vegas now, and he's one of the big rising stars in boxing, and he's out of Stockton. So even they fight him, he's fought like 4 times in a year. So him having those 2 stumbles in his last 3 fights, really not much of anything. He's still on a nice track. So this would be a nice way to get him back up there with a win on Saturday.
What was his name?
Gabriel Flores Jr.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Now you're all caught up on boxing and hockey and everything else you needed to know. The A's still suck.
No, that's true.
Caught you up there. It's over. That's all. I caught you up. They're horrible.
8 wins right now. 8 wins. May 12th. They have 8 wins.
8 wins. 8 and what? 30 something? Or did they have a 25% win percentage?
I don't know.
It's bad. They're on pace to win like 30 games.
And you know what? If they just stay in Oakland, no one cares. That'll be great. Then they can turn. They'll take that. They'll take that type of season. Just stay in Oakland, right?
Yeah. What if? Yeah. I mean, you would for sure. What if Vivek wanted to buy the A's? Because Vivek's been in on the bid for what is it the Senators?
Yeah.
No,
he's
Ottawa,
got the River
right?
Cats, the Auto. I forget which team it is, but
No,
yeah,
he's been in the one that Ryan Reynolds just pulled out of. Like said, he's not going to continue to pursue. No, Brenden, do you know who Ryan Reynolds is?
Yeah, Blake Lively, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
that's his wife.
Yeah.
He's Deadpool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Van Wilder.
Yes. He's also in a movie called Waiting. You ever see that one about waiting tables?
No. There's a lot of like new movies coming out where I'm like, oh, that looks cool. Like maybe I'll see that, and I know damn well I'm never gonna watch it.
You won't.
Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm like, oh, that's probably a good one.
Oh, it was good. I saw
I'll
that
never
already.
Find out.
Yep.
Casey
all right.
Schmidt was in Sacramento watching Guardians of the Galaxy when he missed the call-up call initially to the Giants.
Oh,
and he's
really?
been setting the world on fire with the Giants.
Okay.
It hit a homer in his first not his first at bat, but first game. He went yard last night in Arizona, hit it in the upper deck. Pretty nice first 3 games for him. And yeah, he was in Sacramento watching Guardians of the Galaxy as a member of the River Cats, and he missed the call. So fortunately he got the call while the credits were rolling, and found out he was getting the call up to the bigs.
But did he wait to see the 2 like shorts after the film ends?
Oh, spoiler alert.
Well, no, it's always every Marvel movie. There's always 2 at the end.
I don't know.
Even
May have gotten
shit,
interrupted.
Sean.
Well, to be honest, the last Marvel movie I watched was the first Black Panther. I haven't seen the second one, so yeah, I'm so fatigued with comic book movies. The only one I leave a little bit of wiggle room for is like Batman, because I like all the Batman ones. But
come on, they just keep. I mean, how many bad Batmans have there been? Come on. Val Kilmer was Batman. George Clooney was Batman.
George Clooney, I thought, was the best Bruce Wayne, but a shitty Batman.
No,
that
Michael
movie was
Keaton.
awful.
Michael Keaton was the best. Michael Keaton's the best. I mean,
know
Ben
names,
Affleck.
Dark Knight Rises was a great movie.
Yeah, all the Christopher Nolan ones are great.
Yeah. Well, it's all messed up now. I mean, you have no idea who Batman is anymore. Rob Pattinson.
Those are great. I saw that one. I'll watch it again.
I can't believe you watch these DC movies. Come on,
nerd.
Nerd. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. Make sure to jump on board. Give us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the Kings Beat. Go to thekingsbeat.com. Become a premium subscriber so you can get an invite to the happy hour, which I believe will be next Thursday. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. So for Box 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, we'll see you very soon. I'm James Ham, Kings Insider, ESPN 1320, Kings Beat.